Uh,
What color is it going to be?
it is gonna be in here. All the walls are gonna be kind of like a gray, like you see like downstairs, like a light gray. We also have LED light strips that
Faith
are gonna.
doesn't like gray.
I'm sorry.
I love gray.
But
Gray is a great color.
but listen, we've also got LED light strips that are gonna go around the roof that can change. That will change color too.
LED light.
Oh,
Yeah.
there you go.
Okay, they're over there next to Kinney, actually.
Is that why we have the clock?
Yes, that is why we have the clock.
Oh, okay.
We're also going to mount both these TVs, and at least one of them will have the. I'll bring my switch, and one of them will have the switch plugged into it all, like the whole time. So on Wednesday nights, whenever like school starts and you guys get here early, you can just hang out, play games and stuff. Okay.
Are we keeping the streamers? 'Cause
No, I'm gonna.
Those
take
are
this.
historic. I stood on a table and put those up.
Okay.
for some
Also,
reason.
with shirts, what we're going to do is we're going to take the shirts, and I'm gonna put them on canvas. Okay. We're gonna make like canvas tiles, and then I'll put them together in like a little design
That's cute.
and everything, and and they'll be up in the big room. Okay. In the high school. All right.
Painting shirts on the canvas or?
No, we're like I'll cut them and then
Stretch them out.
stretch them out, and staple them onto the canvas, and then nail the canvases together in a design.
We're being fancy.
Yes, yes, Rebecca.
Are you gonna talk about bounce today or show the video?
Yes, there is a video for Bounce today. So
Let's go.
there's not any of y'all like talking about the experience on Bounce.
Well, you put the times while we were all at band camp.
Well, I didn't realize y'all were at band camp at that time.
Tournament,
It's
so
fine.
that's nice.
So, but Haley had nothing. Naomi had nothing.
I did have things.
What'd you have?
You did have something.
Things.
Nobody.
Things.
You don't know what I was doing. Don't call me out.
To be fair. Actually, I'm gonna go get Bibles.
Yeah.
Goodness. Yeah, she was working that day.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Oh, who would?
But that was my mistake. I didn't realize y'all were in band camp at that time or anything. Okay, that was my fault. All right. So y'all are all off the hook on that. Okay, that was my fault. All right. Next time it will be planned better. Okay. All right. Also, starting in September, if you guys can sing or you can play an instrument, we are going to start having auditions for youth praise team. Okay. Yeah. Like quote air quote auditions. Okay. Brad, Jennifer, and Kimberly Burns, they're going to be the adults that will lead that. Okay. They will be the ones that will help you guys through that and everything. Those will start Wednesday, September 1st at 4:30. Okay? If you guys can be here. All right? I think that's all I've got. So, all right. All right, now I'm going to turn it over to Kathy and
Oh, what color is that side going to be?
oh, that side is going to have 3 walls that will be the same gray, and then this wall that the TV is on is going to be a dark gray.
Oh, thank goodness we have some variety.
I love this gray. At least it's not black.
So true.
What's wrong with black, huh?
No joke. Like
What's
one of
wrong
my
with black?
first, no joke. One of the first youth groups I led. We met in the basement, and the colors in there. They let the kids pick the colors, and they picked red and black.
That's awesome.
It sounds awesome, but when you're going downstairs in a church into a room that is red and black, it felt like you were descending into hell. Like
Awesome.
it
We should totally
did.
do that.
No.
The kids that come in, just sorry, it's we're painted red.
Welcome to
Just
the
turns off the
group.
lights.
And then the LED.
And there were no windows because it was a basement. So like if the lights were off, it was so dark in there. Like it was not great planning.
That sounds like wonderful.
It would be, but it was like half the size of this room. So it wasn't very big. It was a very small church. All right, whenever you're ready, Kathy.
Okay, so we were going to start out doing a skit, but this room is kind of not conducive. So, let me ask you a question. Has anybody ever met someone famous?
Yes.
Yeah.
And how famous?
Bradford Nix.
Bradford Nix.
Good one. I hadn't thought about that.
Kylie Nix.
Mr. James Christian.
No, I met the guy from
I
Muhammad.
did.
and I
Mr.
didn't
Neil,
know.
who did you meet?
Mr. James Christian.
I'm a-
He
He
has
has
it was really
it
funny.
He was like, you sure you don't know me?
I was like, no, bro. What are you talking about?
I met a
Oh.
president
Lauren did
of
one.
these United
Oh, wait.
States.
You did. Who
I
did you
sure
meet?
did.
As opposed to the other.
And he was, he
Me and
was
Emily
our
have tickets
president
to go
of these
see
United
Justin
States,
Bieber.
and he was from Texas.
Was it George Bush?
No, a little bit older than that.
LB,
Give you
LBJ?
a hint. He graduated from San Marcos. Go
Southwest Texas State? Yeah. It
Texas
was,
State.
that's what it was then.
Bobcats.
Lauren
Back when he
Daigle
went
and
there, it was
Matthew
called
West.
Texas State Teachers College.
You met them personally?
Yeah. I was like, sup? And they're like, great.
They look great.
That's exactly how they were.
Did you met LBJ?
Mhm. Met Lyndon Baines Johnson at his house, as a matter of fact,
Wow.
in Stonewall.
I actually
Texas.
think I know that. I don't know
Really?
anything.
I was like 8.
And the only way we got to meet him was,
You were more famous than him.
one of the students in our class
He
was
made
the son on his Secret Service detail.
Oh,
They
okay.
let us go up there and see
Not
him at his house.
Anastasia.
So we had like perks because of the, Mr. Wiesman.
We had a guy in our neighborhood that was on Lady Bird's Secret Service
yeah,
team.
Lady
until
Bird.
she passed
I've
away.
met Lady Bird at, she was at Liz Carpenter. Liz Carpenter was her, press secretary. She lived out in, Mount Banal, and I went out there and Lady Bird was there with her Secret Service staff. But that was a while back.
No, but I can.
Did anybody else, who else has met somebody famous? I saw some other hands.
Yeah, can you top the president? Come on.
Yeah, nobody likes politicians.
Well, I didn't say I liked him, I just said it was
He
cool.
just said he met him, he was famous.
Yeah, you haven't met nobody, that's why. She's going with Brad Nix.
No, I changed it to Lauren Daigle.
Who else?
One of my professors had a Wikipedia page, but I went on it and I'm like 100% sure she made it herself.
Wayne.
Just so her students could Google her?
Yeah.
So, who have I met? I met, you guys wouldn't know this person. Mr. Neal would know this person. I met Molly Ringwald.
Yeah.
I know who that is.
Ringwald.
She's great.
She's an actor.
sight. She's
Yeah.
cool.
She's old.
That is hurtful. Why
Thank
do
you very much.
She used to be so
She had a, when she was trying to make a comeback, she had a TV show. It was called Townies. It probably aired like 3 episodes or something like that. But, so when Leah and Elizabeth were babies, they did a little bit in the entertainment industry, and they got hired to be on her TV show.
They're famous?
Yeah, but they were like backup.
Turn the truth.
Oh.
They were backups to the real kid. They were playing a boy, actually.
You were back.
They were backups to the backups. So anyway, we went on the set of the movie, and Molly Ringwald picked him up, carried him around,
Oh, no, that is cool.
and like the director, Faith and Naomi might know who this is. The director of that show was a man named Linwood Boomer. Weird name, but he played Adam in Little House on the Prairie.
Wait, I was thinking Adam was someone else. Adam is not the person I was thinking of.
And he
It's
picked him up.
sister
He
was
picked him
really
up and
awesome.
carried him around and stuff too. So
That's so cool.
yeah, that's cool. I don't know.
That's all I know. I don't know that many people.
What about a concert? Like when you didn't meet the person, but you saw them from a distance.
That time
A lot of
that,
them, that's right.
who came up to our roof?
Oh,
Yeah, for King and Country came in our roof. That was kind of quirky.
What if we pushed him?
Honestly, I was thinking about that when he was up there. I was like, I could just knock him over. Like, what is he gonna do?
He came down our aisle, whatever that dude's
Yeah,
name
they
is.
came down our row.
Yep.
Which one?
The
older
young-
one.
Oh, I thought it was the younger one. No.
What's the younger one?
Obviously
I don't know.
impactful.
Luke's the one, the younger with the curly, and then
Yeah,
Joel's
yeah,
the stubble, the oldest.
I got it mixed up. Never mind. You're right.
It was King
Sorry.
and Country dude.
I was back for King and Country lore. My bad.
So how do people act when they meet somebody famous?
Sorry, I
Oh, Emily would be. Oh my gosh, Justin
I didn't-
Bieber.
Yeah.
That would be Emily. Sharing crazy.
Ariana Grande said there's 3 different types. The one that's like, oh yeah, and then another one who's like so shy that he can't even talk, and then another one who's like happy and knows what they want, like, ooh girl, You know?
Oh,
I think too many interviews.
That's probably true. People have different reactions. Okay, we are starting the book of Revelation.
Oh, that's cool.
And
You called it.
I have to be honest, this is not my favorite book to go over. I'm like,
It's interesting.
of all the books, I get this one. Okay. Can we go back to the lesson we skipped? That's about love. That would be a whole lot easier. But anyway, the reason I don't like it is probably the same reason a lot of people don't like it, is because it's very easy to get bogged down in the events and when the events happen, and there's a lot of symbolism and a lot of stuff. When you first read it, you're like, oh, that's really weird. But really, the full name of we always just call it Revelation, but the full name of the book is the Revelation of Jesus Christ. And so what the book of Revelation was meant to be was something that reveals who Jesus Christ is and reveals his victory in the end. You know, the book of Revelation is the end of the story, and it hasn't happened yet, but we get a sneak peek. So revelation is kind of also means unveiling or disclosing, and so revelation is God disclosing the ending of the story to us and disclosing who Jesus Christ is and his victory over Satan and over sin and death. So it's actually an exciting book, and the reason that we talked about how you would react if you saw somebody famous is because it's written by John. John is one of the disciples, the same one who wrote the book of John, the same one who wrote 1st, 2nd, and 3rd John. And it's him getting to see Jesus. It's, God, he has this vision of Jesus, and he's in the presence of Jesus. And so he has interesting reaction that we'll get into in a few minutes, but that's why I asked you how you would feel if you met somebody famous, and how you would react, because sometimes we don't know how we would react, and I don't know how I would react, or I should say how I would react when I get in the presence of Jesus. I don't know what I'll do, kind of like that song, I Can Only Imagine. It's, will I dance? Will I stand? Will I fall on my face? What will I can only imagine what I would do, because Jesus is so awesome and so powerful. I can't even think of all the adjectives, but overwhelming is probably a good one. That, being in his presence, I'm not sure how I will react. Let's go ahead and get into it. We're just going to do a little bit of chapter 1 today, and then for the rest of August, we'll be getting into a little bit more of the book. So, chapter 1, verse 9. Who would like to read 9 through 16?
I, John, both your brother and companion in the tribulation and kingdom and patience of Jesus Christ, was on the island that is called Patmos for the word of God and for the testimony of Jesus Christ. I was in the Spirit on the Lord's day, and I heard behind me a loud voice as of a trumpet, saying, I am the Alpha and the Omega, the first and the last. And what you see, write in a book and send it to the 7 churches which are in Asia, to Ephesus, to Smyrna, to Pergamos, to Thyatira, to Sardis, to Philadelphia, and to Laodicea. When I turned to see the voice that spoke with me, and having turned, I saw 7 golden lampstands. And in the midst of the 7 lampstands, one like the Son of Man, clothed with a garment down to the feet, and girded about the chest with a golden band. His head and hair were white like wool, as white as snow, and his eyes like a flame of fire. His feet were like fine brass, as if refined in a furnace, and his voice as the sound of many waters. He had in his right hand 7 stars. Out of his mouth went a sharp two-edged sword, and his countenance was like the sun shining in its strength.
Okay, so we've learned right away who's writing it, and it's just, like I told you, it's John. And he refers to himself as a brother and a fellow partaker in tribulation, is what my Bible says. I know some say a partner in affliction. I don't remember what that version said, Faith. In verse 9.
Both your brother and companion in tribulation and kingdom and patience with Jesus Christ.
A partner in tribulation. So John was on this island called Patmos, and it was kind of a barren island, but does anybody know why he was there? He needed a vacation. Beach
All
day.
inclusive resort, man. Not really. It was all inclusive, but not a resort.
It didn't include tips. So he was there because he was under house arrest. Basically, he was being persecuted because of the gospel, because he had been preaching the gospel and preaching the teachings of Jesus, and so he's one of the he's, I think, the only disciple who did not die a martyr's death. He was because of preaching the gospel, he was sent to the island of Patmos. So he was there all by himself, basically in prison, but he wasn't like in a physical prison. He had the whole island. He just couldn't go anywhere or do anything. He told the churches, he's writing this letter to churches, and he told them that he was their partner in affliction or tribulation. What do you think he meant by that? What did he mean when he called himself a partner?
I think it was just kind of his way to say that, like, he struggled too.
Okay, at this time, the churches were under persecution. They were, the government was against them, and so they were under quite a bit of government persecution. It was not as bad as it was going to get, but it was still, the Roman government was not in favor of them preaching the gospel and preaching anything about Jesus, and so the churches were being persecuted. And so he was telling them that he was a partner with them in their tribulation, that just like they were being persecuted, he was being persecuted. And the Bible tells us that we're all one body, and that when one body hurts, we all hurt. And so he was identifying with them, telling them that he understood how they felt. So he also says he is their partner in the kingdom. So what does that mean?
That he's a fellow believer.
He's a fellow believer. They're all part of the kingdom of God. It also kind of brings with it a meaning of honor and glory. A kingdom. He's telling them that their suffering is going to bring about God's kingdom and bring about honor and glory, that their suffering has a purpose. And then he's a partner in endurance. I don't know if anybody else's Bible has a different word. Mine just says perseverance, which would be the same thing as endurance. So what would be a partner in endurance, or a partner in perseverance? What does he mean by that? Well, what does it mean to endure? Hmm? To love? I think it kind of has, there's kind of like it kind of has two meanings. Like you can endure hardships, and that's kind of like you put up with hardships. Like I said, my Bible says persevere for the same thing, but if you endure, it means you stick through it till the end, right? You don't just quit halfway. If someone's running a race, and they get an injury, but they're still able to finish, they endured through that injury, they still finished. And so John's being persecuted, the church is being persecuted, and they're all looking toward their victory in the end. They're all, they're not just wallowing in the fact that they're having these problems. They are looking forward to the day when they will be glorified and when Jesus will be glorified. And that's what John's going to be revealing in the book of Revelation. He also talks about, in that same verse, he says, because of the word of God and the testimony of Jesus. So he's identifying with Jesus in that sense. Jesus suffered, right? And Jesus endured. And Jesus will reign forever in his kingdom. So he's using those three things also to identify with Jesus and who Jesus is. So I talked about how we're all one body and we all share in suffering. When one of us hurts, we all hurt. Philippians 3:10. Can somebody read that? Look that up and read it.
That I may know him and the power of his resurrection and the fellowship of his sufferings, being conformed to his death.
So this verse is talking about identifying with Jesus and his sufferings and his endurance, like I was talking about a few minutes ago. There's another one, I forgot to write down the reference, about how we all share in each other's sufferings. And how can other people being present motivate you when you'd rather give up, when you're going through a hard time? Maybe I should.
People to go through it with.
You have people to go through it with? People to support you? I probably should have started out with, does it motivate you to have more people to go through suffering and go through hard times with? And is it helpful to know that there's people there to encourage you? So this verse is the suffering he's talking about is persecution. But I don't think it's a far stretch to say that other hard times that we go through, it's helpful to have other people that we're partners with each other in going through those hard times, right? I wouldn't call, going through an illness persecution, but it's still a difficult time. And so it's helpful to be partners with each other through that kind of affliction, because even though it's not persecution like, persecution for the gospel, it's still, life is hard, and there's hard times that we go through and difficulties that we go through, and it's good for us to be there and be a support for each other. And I would encourage you, as you develop friendships here in this youth group. Yes, Gabby?
Technically, he doesn't say persecution, he says tribulation. So it doesn't just mean in persecution, but also in the
In
hardships of
tribulation,
life.
yeah. Good point. So, this has been an interesting week of watching Christians support each other through hard times, for me, from people that I have known anyway. So, we had somebody in our church who passed away this week. Miss Griggs passed away, and she was somebody who a lot of people knew and a lot of people know. Miss Burnham, who plays the piano, and Miss Griggs is her mom. And I was not at the memorial service for that, but I know that there was a good number of people there. And they were there, there were people there who knew Miss Griggs and wanted to mourn her and say goodbye to her, but there were also people who were there because they know Miss Burnham, they know Miss Patricia, and they wanted to be there to support the family and support her. So that's a way that we as Christians support each other when people are going through a hard time. We had another family, I know Gabby knows them too, another family here in Bastrop lost their son, and I was at that memorial service, and there were, how many people were there, Faith and Naomi?
A lot, and there were 100 people watching online, 100 screens watching online.
Yeah, there were probably,
And there were 2 overfillers.
there was, the sanctuary was full. It was not here, it was at another church. The sanctuary was full, there were 2 overflow areas. I mean, there probably were at least 500 people there. And he was only 20 years old, and it's tragic, I won't go through the whole story, but we were there to support, his name was Josh. Josh is in heaven. Josh is experiencing what we're going to read about here in a few minutes. Daniel, sorry. His brother's Josh. Sorry, Josh is still with us. Daniel is experiencing what we are going to read about in a few minutes. But his family is still here, and his family was grieving. And so the Christian body and people from all different churches and all different things that they were involved in. It wasn't just people that they went to church with. It was, the larger Christian body in Bastrop was there to support them and love them and show them that we were with them in suffering. So, that's a way that we can be partners with each other and encourage one another is when people are experiencing grief, we can, and you don't have to, a lot of people say, oh, I don't know what to say, I don't know what to do. You don't have to say anything. You can just be with them, and if you knew the person that they lost, you can tell them a story or what that person meant to you. But you don't have to feel like you have to say all the right words or do the right thing. So just be with them and let them know if they need anything that you're there for them. So, not just grieving, but, if you have a friend at school that is going through a hard time, maybe they're struggling in school, struggling with relationships, maybe they're having family issues, just be there for them and encourage them. That's a way that we can be partners with each other. By the way, I just remembered that at Daniel's funeral, even his mother forgot his name, so I don't feel bad. Or got his name mixed up with who she was.
He used his sister's name.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
Oh man.
Rachel, Daniel, whatever his name is. End of her speech too.
So, and we also can always remember, I've never thought about this before when I've read this, but, and we didn't get into this, but it talks about the lampstands. I saw 7 golden lampstands, and in the middle of the lampstands I saw one like a son of man, clothed in a robe, reaching to the feet and girded across his chest with a golden sash. The lampstands, we're going to find out later, the lampstands represent the churches. And this symbolism is Jesus. They're talking about Jesus, the Son of Man, is there among the churches. So they weren't just there for each other, and they weren't, John just wasn't there for them, but Jesus was there, and he was there among them, and he was walking among them. So Jesus shares in our suffering as well, and Jesus is there, and he's present, even though when you do go through a hard time, even though you may not feel like he's there, we know that he is, and he's there, and he shares in our suffering. And just like I said, Jesus suffered, and Jesus persevered when he was here on earth. Verses 17 and 18. Now we're going to see what John's reaction was when he was in the presence of Jesus. Who wants to read 17 and 18?
And when I saw him, I fell at his feet as dead. But he laid his right hand on me, saying to me, "Do not be afraid, I am the first and the last. I am he who lives and was dead, and behold, I am alive forevermore. Amen. And I have the keys of Hades and of death."
So what did John do when he was in the presence of Jesus?
Died. Fainted.
He fell on his
Hands and feet.
fell at his feet. I was going to say he fell on his face, but we don't know for sure that it was on his face. That's how I picture it. But it says he fell like he was dead. That was his reaction in the presence of Jesus. Just being in his presence was so overwhelming in his holiness and his majesty that that was his response. And what is a proper response to Jesus' glory? Is there one? I don't know that there is a proper response. I think it's just whatever comes from your heart. Whatever. Honestly, I think when we actually do get in the presence of Jesus, I don't think we'll care, what other people are thinking. But whatever comes from the heart is the proper response. Just like I said, just like the song, there's a whole lot of things that you can do in the presence of Jesus, and we don't know what we'll do. But what does Jesus do?
He lays his hand on you and says, "Don't be afraid."
He lays his hand on him. He reaches down and he lifts him up. The Lord of glory reaches down, and he reaches down with love. And even though he has all power in his hands, he can still be gentle enough to pick somebody up who's overcome, and to show him love and to show him compassion. So and he tells him not to be afraid. Psalm 103. I'm going to read it because I didn't write the verse. Oh, is that the...
Yeah, that's okay.
Okay. They made their presence known.
Hey, gallery.
Oliver, Miley.
Come on in. Come on in. Okay, so real quickly, you guys want to tell us your names? Some of you we know, but tell us your names anyway.
What's your name, Madison?
Madison, Caleb,
Miley.
Madison, Caleb, and Miley. Welcome.
Wait, is that Miley? I thought it was just Miley. It's Miley.
Miley.
How do you spell that?
UH.
Miley. UH
Miley.
space Miley.
Okay.
I thought
The
it was
space
more
is
like
silent.
a UGH, kind of like
That's why. Miley. She was coming.
So we are talking about the book of Revelation. Something light. We are talking about John being in the presence of God, and I forgot to write down the verse for Psalm 103. So, I won't read it right now, but Psalm 103 talks about how the Lord has compassion on those who fear him. So what does it mean? He tells John not to be afraid. Why do you think John was afraid?
Read the description.
Well, John was probably afraid by what love and never figured like the judgment day.
Mhm.
You know you can, and like you know what was right, but you still sin.
I tend to think of it as like when Moses went up to Mount Sinai and God told him to hide his face lest he die. I tend to picture it as like John turns around and he sees this depiction where, he describes kind of this very powerful type of image of Jesus, and I think that he just kind of like falls down, like realizing just how imperfect and flawed he is and how powerless he is, and just kind of falls down in a sense of like, acknowledging Jesus' authority.
I think it was humbling. I think it was
Yes.
his way of humbling. If you read the description again, it says, his head and his hair were white like wool, like snow, and his eyes were like a flame of fire. His feet were like burnished bronze when it has been made to glow in a furnace, and his voice was like the sound of many waters. In his right hand he held 7 stars, and out of his mouth came a sharp 2-edged sword, and his face was like the sun shining in its strength. So,
Should have Faith try to draw that.
Let me finish the logo first.
so he has all these, he's just, it's light, a lot of images of light and fire and glowing, and then you've got this tongue like a 2-edged sword. I mean, it was scary for John, and I think Clayton's right. I think he just fell at his feet, in humble submission to this person. And yet, the one who is to be feared says, "Do not be afraid." John was someone who lived with Jesus. John was someone who saw the resurrected body of Jesus. He believed. He was a believer. He was somebody who preached the gospel, and because of that, he had no reason to be fearful of who God was. even the most timid Christian, even the most, fearful Christian has no reason to be afraid in the presence of Jesus. I saw something. Who does have a reason to be afraid in the presence of Jesus? Come on.
It's not a trick question.
No.
Not a-
It's a sobering question, a sobering answer. Someone who doesn't know him, someone who doesn't believe him, someone who doesn't believe that he is God. Once you're in his presence and you see him, it's too late.
I
For-
think it would be more fearful for Christians rather than people who didn't know or people who didn't grow up with, like, believing. Because with Christians, you knew what was right. You knew which path to take, yet you still wavered from it. Yeah. And even says, like, you can, like, not be scared of anything, but you need to be fearful of God. Like, that's the one fear you should have at the top of your list.
So, is there such a thing as having a healthy fear of God?
Yes.
Because
So-
to have wisdom, you have to have fear of God. That's the first step.
Mm-hmm. When you know who he is, when you know that he's the holy God, when you know that you have offended him, even in your smallest sin, you have offended, God who is holy. There is a healthy fear of him. And yet, you can be confident that in his presence, he loves you, and he's a loving God, and he has compassion on you. And, the God of the universe reached out to John, who had fallen on his face. It doesn't say on his face, but like I said, that's what I picture. He felt like he was dead, reached out and picked him up and said, "Do not be afraid." So yes, we need to be aware of the fact that we have offended Jesus, and aware of the fact that he died for our sins. But probably what the best way to say it is, we don't need to be physically afraid of him. But for those who don't know Jesus, when they meet him face to face, that's going to be a scary time. You can stand before God and say, Jesus died for my sins, and therefore, I claim his righteousness. Somebody who doesn't know him and didn't believe in him cannot claim that righteousness. And so it is a scary thing. That is why we do need to be concerned about our friends that don't know him. And we do need to share the gospel with them and introduce them to the Jesus who does love them and has compassion on them, even though they have sinned against him. Verses 19 and 20. Somebody want to read that?
Write down what you have seen, both the things that are now happening and the things that will happen. This is meaning of the mystery of the 7 stars you saw in my right hand and the 7 gold lampstands. The 7 stars are the angels of the 7 churches, and the 7 lampstands are the 7 churches.
So this is kind of a good summary of what's to come in the book of Revelation. The book of Revelation, it speaks to our present time and what we're going through right now, and it speaks in the age to come and what's going to happen in the future. And it calls us to live in this present time in light of what's going to happen in the future, to think about the end. We're kind of fortunate in that, does anybody ever read the end of the book before they start it? sometimes. I used to do that sometimes.
Watch me.
Sometimes if I know a movie's really intense, sometimes sometimes I do look up the summary of it just so I know what's
You guys
going
see them Harry Potter books? They were like that. I really thought I was gonna read that.
Y'all really thought?
No, I paid my $10 and I went to the movie. With popcorn
And then he
a
paid
chase.
a lot more money and went to Universal.
Watched the movie.
Okay, so we are fortunate.
Oh, yeah.
We are fortunate that God lets us know the end here, and we know. And we're going to see as we get into Revelation, we're going to see that Jesus is victorious, that Jesus wins in the end. And we're fortunate to see the end. And so we can live now knowing that even though things can be difficult, that if we persevere in the end, we will be conquerors with Jesus. So, I wrote something down here. One of the things, I said I don't really like the book of Revelation because there's so much controversy and it can be kind of confusing. But I wrote something down here. It says, God is in sovereign control of all the events of history. So, of all the events that have ever happened in history, nothing has ever happened outside of God's control. Even things that are going on now. He knew there was going to be COVID and this pandemic and all the things that we've seen in the world lately. He knew this was going to happen. And although evil may prevail for short periods of time, Christ will prevail in the end. He will come in glory to judge and to rule. So, I started out not being excited about teaching Revelation, but now I'm kind of excited for the next few weeks. I haven't looked ahead, but I am excited for what's to come. So, with that, we'll go ahead and close because it's almost time to go to service. And we already did announcements. Hope to see you all at the Barge Party.
Yeah, for our new sixth graders or new seventh graders, for the Barge Party, be back here at 1:30. Okay, or if you're going, okay. So, all right. Do you guys have any questions about Barge Party or anything like that? Yes.
What does barge like?
Okay, it's like this big boat, but it's like a square and it's double decker. And there's like a spot where you can jump off and there's like a slide. It's really
Honestly, I wouldn't even say it's a boat. It's like
Yeah.
a deck.
It's
That's
a,
like-
it's like
it's
a
a
deck
deck
that
with a motor.
floats.
And has
It's really
slides.
And there's dinner.
It's a company that runs it. It's not. We're not like all out there not knowing what we're doing.
Yeah.
There's someone like qualified.
We go.
Certainly not.
It's not just Clayton. Just
Certainly not qualified. All right.
We go out to Lake Travis, and they go. We take the barge out to an area, and they'll park it, anchor it, whatever it is, and we just swim in the water.
If you get lucky and they park you in the right spot, there's also like cliff jumping.
Oh yeah.
All right.
It's not like a high cliff. It's more like a.
Does anybody have any prayer requests? All right, then you want to go ahead and close this out in prayer?
Yeah, sure. And
Oh, Miss Patricia.
Miss Patricia, I saw her.
Dr. Patricia.
Dr. Burnham.
And Sandy Kelly.
Okay.
She was very weak yesterday. She got taken to the Austin hospital.
okay.
I think she's still there.
Okay. And pray for. I know school's starting for you guys the 17th, but your teachers are coming back tomorrow, so pray for them. They're they're having to make a lot of decisions, so just pray that they can be wise and make ones for you. They're trying to figure out where to put everybody. So, okay, I'm gonna pray. Dear Heavenly Father, thank you for each student that you have brought here this morning, and we know that each one is here is who you want to be here and who you wanted to hear the message. And Lord, just thank you for revelation and thank you for who you are, and thank you for that you are in control of everything and that you are sovereign. And Lord, I pray for Dr. Burnham and for her son John as they are grieving the loss of their mother and grandmother. I just pray that you would show us how to be a support to them, and that they would feel loved and supported by the Christians around them. And I pray for Sandy Kelly, who is feeling weak this morning, and I just pray that you would be with her, help the doctors to treat her, so that she can start feeling better. And Lord, I pray for the start of school, and I pray for all of those who are in decision-making positions and have to make decisions about so many different things now. I pray that you would just give them wisdom, and I would hope that you would help those of us that have to live under those decisions to be accepting of those. And I pray for the service today. Just help us all to pay attention. Be with us on the barge this afternoon, and keep us all safe, and help us to have a good time of fellowship. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen.